So I think we can start now. Hello and a very warm welcome to all of you. The topic for today's webinar is water as leverage, and we are going to talk about urban water resilience, a message for the future generations. So this is the first session of the Water as Leverage for Resilient Asian Deltas webinar series. My name is Mukit Iqbal, and I'm the Partnerships Coordinator at Water Youth Network. I will be your moderator for this event. The structure for this webinar would be divided into three parts. First of all, we will have, I will introduce the topic and the speaker, who is Hank. And then we will have a conversation with our speaker for about 40 minutes. And lastly, we will have question and answer sessions. So please share with us your questions and comments in the chat box while you keep your microphones and videos switched off to avoid any distortion. And we'll try to engage with all your questions in our conversations. Thank you once again for joining. I would start with a brief introduction to Water Youth Network, which is a global connector in the water sector made up of vibrant community of students and young professionals. We at Water Youth Network, we aim to connect those young professionals and students among each other and to empower the young leaders to come up with their own solutions and to take forward the already made solutions in the water sector. Have you ever wondered if there are any methods to enhance urban water resilience, tackle sustainability, and also minimize climate risks all at once? Well, this is your opportunity, because with me today, I have Henk Owink, who is the Special Envoy for International Water Affairs for the Kingdom of the Netherlands and Sherpa to the United Nations High-Level Panel on Water. Very welcome to you, Henk.
Yeah, thanks so much, Mukit. It's great to be with you and with the Water Youth Network, a strong and inspiring partner in my work around the world. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And thanks to all of our viewers as well who have joined us today. I would like to start our conversation with Hank with the first question, which our viewers might have already read about, but I would like you to tell us a little bit more about Water as Leverage program and its 3 case studies. And maybe, yeah, let's start with that.
Yeah, so, I have to, in the current times, I have to take a little step back on the Water as Leverage program. And if you look at my screen now, you see different pages on the internet. Secretary General Guterres calling for a time of science and solidarity.
Yes.
I couldn't agree more, but in this COVID-19 crisis, science and solidarity are often lacking. We see around the world where the pandemic hits the most vulnerable. And I did a little homework myself on that. If I add up all vulnerabilities, gender, water, climate, conflict, urban, slums, GDP gap, health, etc., the darker it is, the more vulnerable it is. Also to say is that this coronavirus impacts elderly more than young, and the average age of Africa is a little under 20, while the average age of Europe is way above 40, close to 50. So there is of course a difference in vulnerability. But the COVID crisis shows that the way we live, work, deal with our environment is not sustainable, and that gives us an option. The Guardian long read says that by Peter Baker says we can't go back to normal, and we all know this. I think if I would ask among the people who joined today, can we go back to normal? I think there will be consensus about it. No, the crisis again is a wake-up call. The recovery should not be a response to that crisis, but should be a leapfrog towards the future. But at the same time, and I'll get to water as leverage immediately, but at the same time in this crisis, what we see happening now is because there is this call to invest in the economy massively across the world by countries, by private sector, by multilaterals, that we take off-the-shelf projects, ready-made projects, the stupid infrastructure projects of the past, if only they help us recover the economy. But if we do so, we will make ourselves more vulnerable, and next pandemics, next disasters will hit worse. So I think this is the condition in which the COVID-19, the Corona crisis, helped us position again. If we want to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, if we want to reach our commitments of the Paris Agreement, we have to find novel ways that are not coming from this lock-in in government, business, and society, that are not coming from this necessary need by some to only think of economic short-term gains and invest massively, but that we have to take this holistic, comprehensive approach. I think this is to getting to the point on why and what water as leverage is. I think that is critically important to understand that this crisis also shows that again. I will, and yeah, you know, we know, you know, the numbers. And this is the current. This was today. As you see, the US most hit and most vulnerable. But then again, it's everywhere. Every African country now also has a Corona crisis parts. Now, I have to go the other way. We can't go back to no. But Corona is not alone. The climate crisis is at our front step, at our front door. And we have to think about SDGs, climate, health, as the way to move forward. And you all, as youth, rally the street and hold us accountable, and you're right. Science holds us accountable. IPCC says that with the global warming, beyond 1.5, we will be lost. The way we plan, organize, and invest in in this planet with the Climate Change and Land Report is wrecking not only our biodiversity and sustainability, but also is making us more vulnerable in the context of climate change in two ways: increasing climate change and increasing its impact. So mitigation and adaptation challenges. And last, with sea level rise, with the report that came out last year, the Ocean and Cryosphere report, it shows that we are at risk more than we thought. So the gap between where we want to go, the emissions gap report shows that again. The gap where we are going and the gap where we need to go is big, and this gap is like massive. Now I'll skip this. I'll use this a bit to jump to water as leverage. So the future is challenging and intense, with every challenge building up, but solutions from the past will not make our future more resilient. And I used this metaphor a little bit before, is that we build a system in the past, and the system produces solutions a little bit like this tool, this toy. The blocks fit the cube, and the cube produces the blocks. But now this crisis again shows, and climate crisis shows it too, and our humanitarian crisis around too, is that the solutions of the past will not bring sustainability for tomorrow. So it's not by the system, the existing system of rules and regulations, policies and politics, that we can drive innovative approaches that will make us more sustainable. It's not through the existing that the future will become more resilient and sustainable. It's through the future. And the Sustainable Development Goals are the holistic, comprehensive agenda for that better future. The Paris Agreement is the pathway, the roadmap towards 1.5 degree. So that means business as usual is definitely not enough. Lethal currently in the way it's wrecking our biodiversity, our societies, our culture, and also our economies. So if you add that up, you see that we have a non-responsive approach, which makes us more vulnerable, stupid infrastructure, not taking into account social, environmental, cultural, as well as more comprehensive valued economic risks and needs. We more and more become reactive because more crises hit, storms, floods, droughts, corona. So we respond, but in a way it's a band-aid approach that if we build back a little better, it increases a bit our redundancy, but does not change sustainability and resiliency. And if we want to really step up, we have to become proactive. Now, yeah, and in this proactiveness, which is important too, is that it's not only cool stuff that will make it proactive. It's really hard work because you don't want to leave anyone behind. The motto of the UN is leaving no one behind. That is not a paper motto. That is a real motto. It's critically important because we lag behind on Sustainable Development Goal 6 for one. Over 2.3 billion people lack access to safe drinking water. Over 4 billion lack access to safe sanitation facilities. And this is in 2020. So this is not okay. And so if we think about transformative approaches that are catalytic and bring change, we have to make sure that those moonshots, that type of leapfrogging, leaves no one behind. And I think this is a double challenge where I said it's a parallel path, leaving no one behind, and these blue deals, green deals, transformative moonshots, tipping point approaches have to be combined, have to come together. And water helps. Now, you're from the water family, so it's a little bit preaching to the choir, but I do think it's relevant to talk with you why. We see water in every sustainable development goal, in poverty and hunger and well-being and education, gender. It's women and kids that walk the wells for hours. Women can't work, kids can't go to school, increasing the gender gap, decreasing development opportunities for the kids. Without sanitation, the girls are monthly dropouts because their periods and the unsafety of sanitation makes it impossible for them to go to school. Again, increasing this gender and development gap. It's for energy, it's for economic growth, it's impacting our infrastructure, critically important. It helps reduce inequalities. Water in our cities, it's either bettering the cities with floods or with droughts. Part of food and food security. And of course, then 90% of all natural disasters are water related. So climate action and water climate action and climate adaptation and water are directly linked. But water helps mitigate from the source climate change occurrence. Now, life below water and life on land, biodiversity without clean water is a loss. And without water, it's the lack of the quality of life and the ability to stay in the place where you grew up, because there is no water, with droughts occurring longer and longer. People move, increasing tensions, sometimes conflicts, migration. And water and climate are root causes for conflict and migration. So for peace, justice, and strong institutions. And of course, partnership. Water shows, because of all these connections, that the only way forward is by collaboration. Now, if we understand this in these interdependencies better, then we can start to value it. And with the high-level panel, we agreed understanding, valuing, and managing are critically important for water security and water sustainability, and for the SDGs as a whole. But with that valuing, there comes part of the point. And I think this is where water, why it is an enabler, a leverage for sustainable development. It's also tough to grasp. Because if I invest in water, so let's say the water will, if you as a water youth network and your peers around the world do everything you can and perform on the highest standards, the revenues, the result and the impact are actually outside of the water world. So with clean water, health costs go down. The Minister of Health and the Minister of Water don't talk to each other, neither do their budget. And so forth. Investing in water for good economy, investing in water for food security, investing in water for better biodiversity, investing in water for lack of insecurity, more peace, less migration. Investing in water brings revenues across the SDGs, but capturing these revenues is not easy. So valuing water should not come only from a financial economic point, but from a holistic approach. And this is why water is this leverage, this enabler, but also why it's very complex. So managing water is not only that we take care of water, integrated water resource management, being accountable, transparent, doing things inclusive, but it's also really about capturing those values in a better way. Now, all as an introduction, and I said that leaving no one behind, the implementation, all as an introduction that it is critically important. If we look at the challenges the world faces, we have to invest in water. Now I'll go faster because otherwise I won't make up the time. So let me skip a bit. Yeah, I'll do this. And if we want to accomplish our goals, we have to look at the long term in a comprehensive way. We have to invest now in innovative projects, and long term and short term should be connected. It should be done in inclusive collaboration, so empowering all and including all stakeholders, all needs, and it should be transparent. So it's accountable, but also we can start to change the business case from a single focused, stupid infrastructure business case to a holistic, sustainable business case. And if we do this right, if we connect these dots, this is where we are building institutional and individual capacity. So capacity among our governments, institutions, business, but also capacity among citizens and professionals like you all. And if we want to do this right, if we want to connect this, we need innovation. Now design, and this brings me to water as leverage, is a way, design, engineering, planning, innovation are ways to bring it together. It's the process, it's the approach. Because we need three things: solutions. Now, design is solution oriented, it's aimed at innovation, it's catalytic, but also pragmatic. It's about connectivity across the SDGs, all interests, needs, challenges, but also across scale and time, from your front yard to the river shed, across borders and boundaries, but also learning from the past and leapfrogging towards the future to define what we should do best now. So solution-oriented with the capacity to connect. And then design is inspirational and aspirational. I think the narrative, the SDGs are a narrative, the Paris Agreement are a narrative. But how does it work then? How can we put it in place? And I think this is where a water design, planning, geography approach, a physical approach helps. Because you turn it into solutions that talk to a broader crowd, that help infuse the debate on values and inclusion and a holistic approach. So we need that aspiration, that political capacity. It's critically important. Now, skipping this to get you to water as leverage. Having said this, some ingredients are important, knowing that we come from this, where there's a lock-in in the process, there's a disconnect between the past and the future. You can't go by the current institutional ways. So for that, we need to bypass the institutions. And this goes by bringing everybody at the table, the talent of a place, of the world, in collaboration, but also take a kind of sidestep. Normally you go from challenge to solution, but now we would create a safe space, soft spaces, the theory says, to help bend the trend, maximize opportunities, develop catalytic interventions, bring them to scale for systemic change. I think this is what we did with Rebuild by Design in New York, and this is also what we aim for with Water as Leverage, where normally in this traditional approach, you have a challenge. Based on the challenge, you do research. Based on the research, feasibility, study of solutions. Based on that, project development, financing, implementation, and then the solution fails. Because this is a linear approach. But we need a circular, integrated, inclusive approach where this holistic approach, this sidestep out of the locking we find ourselves in, helps us rethink what is sustainable and catalytic approach forward is. So this is one part. Again, second is the alliance. We need a coalition that will bring us forward. We need to include all and empower all. And we also need to provoke a broader group of professionals, institutions out there. And that brings me to, sorry for the long intro, but I had to do this. Water is leverage. There's a challenge we focused on South and Southeast Asia, not for nothing. This is where a lot of the water, climate, urban, economic challenges add up, and we put them as we did with the research, the geography of future water channels. Let's put them on the map. And what you see then is that the hotspot of challenges are cities in South and Southeast Asia, where river floods, sea floods, typhoons, landslides occur, where there's drought stress, salination, salt intrusion, sea level rise, subsidence, temperature bump, and water pollution occur. And they add up in these cities. So the cities are the places where things tend to fall apart, but also are the places where things come together and where there is capacity, locally, nationally, regionally, and internationally, to change the curve, connect the dots and change the curve. We selected three. We had to start somewhere. Chennai in India, Khulna in Bangladesh, and Semarang in Indonesia. And those are three cities that are totally different. So we choose them for a reason, because they are different in size and scale, and in explore the opportunities of water as leverage there. There is an institutional context in place. The Netherlands has MOUs, so agreements with the three countries. They all partner in the Global Commission on Adaptation. So we have a backing there, and there's a connection with the high-level panel as well. Now, part of this focus is that overcoming this big gap in where we need to go and where we are is that this tension to only focus on the project. And I already said, don't invest in stupid infrastructure, but in holistic, comprehensive approaches, but also invest in the people to get there, this capacity part. Capacitating communities, governments, NGOs, universities, businesses. That is easy money almost. It's $1 million to spend for the $1 billion in projects work. So it's almost like not a lot, but it's critically important. The enabling environment, building capacity among people to help develop and implement projects and care for them, build ownership is critically important. For that, collaboration and capacity building are critically important. And to ensure that we invest there. What we did with Water as Leverage is that we started there. We started with the enabling environment. We started with local partners, government, and selected 2 local and international teams per city. So in each city, 2 teams worked that consisted of local and international partners, experts that really understand water and climate and urban vulnerability, and work again in coalitions off the ground. So I think that investment in understanding, building capacity, partnerships, coalitions that be more aware, have a better understanding, and therefore whatever comes out of that, even without us, even without everything that comes out of there is better informed. And then you already escape that in this need to invest, you jump to conclusions fast. Then because there is an increased capacity and a stronger enabling environment, you rethink what you do. The question then was a very abstract slide, I'm very sorry. This is from the work document, is that we wanted an analysis on the system scale, integrated, an approach for the city that was programmatic, the identification of projects that are catalytic, so that can drive change, or phases of bigger programs that can help drive the change in these programs, to tie it all together. So that's a little bit what the scheme is about. As I said, 6 teams in 3 cities, City of 1,000 Tanks team in Chennai, and Rise Chennai team, cascading Semarang and One Resilient Semarang in Semarang, and Kulna as a water inclusive enclave, and the natural drainage solutions for Kulna City teams in Kulna City. I'll take, I'm actually not sure, but I will take at least, yeah, I'll show some examples, if that's okay. This is Chennai, yeah? Mukit, is that okay?
Yes.
Yeah? Yeah. This is Chennai, where the 1,000 Tanks team, led by Oes, did an analysis on water use, current system. So this is the contour of Chennai, this is the coastline. So Chennai takes water from afar. Tanks in the river sheds that diminish during droughts. There's rainfall, of course, and then there's desalination plants. So there's a lot of water coming in, and then water is pumped out of the aquifer. So that is the water. But if you see how the city is, has a hardened surface, of all the water they capture, almost everything goes to the sea. So there's only a part that is used in the city itself. And because of that, there is a water shortage. You can't even understand. With so much water coming in, there is still a water shortage. And then they have all these desalination plants that eat up a lot of energy, produce brine. There's a pollution of the aquifer that's becoming more saline, and all untreated sewage going into the sea. So the sea is polluted too. So totally non-sustainable, but still happening. While if you add the numbers up, there is more than enough water for everybody and everything. So for people and economy. There's also an opportunity to clean the water before it goes back into the aquifer. So you can stabilize that aquifer, actually recharge it and then stabilize it. And what goes to sea is clean. So the sea becomes an asset again. Energy costs go down and values go up. This is done all by nature-based solutions. This is interesting. I just lost my slide. This is all done all by nature-based solutions at the scale of the city and the city region. My keynote comes up again. I will show you how that works. No clue. Here we are again. I'll take this one then. Through. Okay. nature-based solutions that prevent floods, help prevent drought, work on sanitation, and increase the improvement of urban environment. Restoring historic tanks, building new tanks, investing in forestry, renaturalize rivers and canals, and invest in bioswales, constructed wetlands, recycle solid waste, and make sure the buildings are adaptive. So with all these solutions, we mitigate and adapt for climate risks. And those are implemented in 4 places in Chennai. It really hates me now. And I really don't have a clue why. Let me figure this out. You see this too?
Yes, we can see it.
Yeah, okay. Sorry here. So 4 sites in Chennai that not only mitigated climate risks with these flagship projects, but we also asked the teams, so how does this then work on the SDG agenda? Not in the end to show, but from the beginning, informing the change across the full SDG agenda. And you see, if you work with and through water, you see impacts across the SDGs. Now the whole process in Genesis is that we started, there will be trials, feasibility and flagship reports, and then these will be the new norm. And we start now with a pilot on the school, then we can scale it up to the neighborhood and then scale it up across Chennai. And that school program, we're scaling up across Chennai and then scale it up across India. So you see a double approach. This is the example in Samara. Analysis shows flood risk, landslides, water pollution, as well as subsidence. So a lot of challenges here too. And the 2 teams actually started to work together, one resilient Samara and cascading Samara, and developed an approach with in one program with different projects, working on the economic zones on the coast, protecting the coast with nature-based solutions, looking at these rivers that became channels in the city and opening them up, give them more redundancy and a more sustainable way of working like they were in the past. Looking at the kampongs and making them more socially resilient. The mountains, where the spongy capacity can hold the water and bring it back to the aquifer, as well as on the industrial complex a little to the east. In Kulna, the teams worked at different scales. So the full scale of the river, the Mayur, as well as looking at the scale of the polders, of the regional scale. The full scale means all the way up where the water comes from, as well as to the coastal area, the Sundarbans. And the capacity, the resilient capacity they have, but they're very vulnerable because of pollution, economic growth, sea level rise, surges and storms, but mostly man-made interventions. At the regional scale, looking at solutions in the mix with agriculture, and of course at the city scale, investing in like the tanks in Chennai, looking at the Mayur River, as well as different aspects of that river. Water as leverage started as the challenge to overcome the gap in that the existing approaches drive infrastructure that makes us more vulnerable, but that has a business case, and that leaves many people behind, into an approach where by collaboration and innovation, we wanted to identify those interventions, projects that are catalytic, that can help drive the change so necessary. And with that opportunity, can help bring these cities towards a more a resilient future. And that means that we worked with not only the communities and the local and national stakeholders, international experts, but of course also with the people that can finance this from the beginning, informing the World Bank, the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, FMO in the Netherlands, KfW from Germany, and so forth, Asian Development Bank, Islamic Development Bank, the financial partners, that if we can include you from the beginning, you will understand better what innovation is in the end and why it is so necessary. They understood, FMO, Green Climate Fund, Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank all made comments, as well as the World Bank and others, that this indeed is a challenging approach for them, because being included from the beginning also is challenging for them, but that it is valuable, worthwhile, that they need this. We're now in the midst of going from these proposals to real projects with business case and investment opportunities, while at the same time we look at opportunities to scale this up across the world. It's not easy, it was not easy with Rebuild, it will not be easy with Water as Leverage, but it's a necessity with the challenge on drinking water, on pollution, on floods and droughts. But I was encouraged, Secretary General in last September said, we must step up our efforts now, and he's continuing in this effort. We have to act now. If not for us, at least for these two little girls we caught in Semarang, the youngest one wants to be a doctor. We'll better give her that future fast if we'll continue to jump from pandemic to pandemic. I think I stop here now. Is that an idea, Mukit? Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much for such an insightful introduction to the water as leverage, and I'm sure that it was very insightful for our viewers as well. I would like to ask you, based on your experience as your involvement in the water as leverage, how do you feel like youth can be more involved in programs like water as leverage?
But the good thing, it was interesting when we, Water as Leverage start, I have to close the sheets for the wind, otherwise it gets too warm in my house. This is working from home, you know, you have a view where I live. When we did a call to experts, we made some demands. And I'm a strong believer in that if you challenge the market for brilliant ideas, you can also ask them to comply with the SDGs. So we said, you have to take into account the valuing water principles. One, those principles came out of the high-level panel on water. And we said, in your bid, if you want to compete and join this effort, this collaboration, you have to show us that you understand and take with you these valuing water principles. Second, you have to commit to implement the SDGs and work on the Paris Agreement. And then we said explicitly, if we look at gender, make sure your team consists for at least 50% women. It's not hard. If you ask teams to, they will do it. It's a normal ask. This is what we agreed upon. And thirdly, we said, make sure you have a youth strategy. Understand what young and youth do and can do and should do in the work you are progressing. And for ourselves, we asked Shabana, because there is a board that is overseeing the program, can someone from the Water Youth Network be a representative in the board? So it's an alternate position, but there is a seat in the board for a Water Youth Network member. So with that, this is one. So this is what we tried. Second, I think the hardest part, of course, the proof of, you can have every ambition in the world, but the hardest part is, of course, always is in making it work. If we go out, so we really push the teams hard on reaching out to schools, to universities, to youth organizations, if they were there, helping, you know, in a way, the opportunity to be included, to have a voice, a seat at the table. It's not easy, eh? I'm not saying it's easy. Your question was the other way around. How can youth networks be more part of this?
Exactly.
But it also is a responsibility for businesses and governments and NGOs to say, hey, gender and youth are normal parts of our values. This is why we have to provoke ourselves and, of course, provoke youth.
Thank you so much.
Then when this happens, then there is always the challenge how you organize this. And I think having a Water Youth Network, therefore, is very helpful. We can fall back on you and say, hey, help us. How do we do this? Do you have a representative or people you know in these 3 cities? How can we include them? Which schools? With Rebuild by Design, we had over, I think, close to 40 schools included, and plus that universities, to really make sure that the children of the schools, of course, brought the parents, not the other way around. So it is I mean, we share. Even if I'm a little bit older than you are, so probably I won't live the years you will live. I really hope. But we, in what we do, we share the same future. So we can only do this together. I can never say it is your future, so therefore your responsibility. It's my responsibility and your future, but it's also your responsibility. So it means we have to find a way to work better together, understand each other. And the best thing of understanding comes by working together. I mean, we can talk forever, but really doing it together makes it, this is where the partnerships come from. That is where it's so amazing.
Exactly. Thank you so much. I think that's a very good way of looking at it. And we as youth, we should also be more proactive and take responsibility. So, and this was already the idea of this webinar. I would like to talk about replicability of Water as Leverage project. How do you see the potential for this program replicating in the global south, for example?
So we try, because it is a novel way, but also because it needs money. So it needs the money for we need to, the millions for the billions are a tagline, which is nice, but I'm serious. If I don't invest in the process and research and academia, in an enabling environment, in people, in communities, in NGOs, if I don't, then forget about the project. So in that type of investment means if you look at aid, a lot of the aid funding goes top down. So of $100, $1 hits the ground, and you always have to try to reverse that by investing it from the ground up. But that type of investment still needs to be there. So replication also comes with resources. Second, if replication of the process can't be followed up with replication of implementation, then we put a promise on the table we can't keep. And this is also the challenge now with Water as Leverage. We have 27 opportunities in these 3 cities. Amazing opportunities to invest in. but the deals are not done yet. So I mean, almost in some, nowhere close in others. So it's not only that we have this process and increased capacity and an enabling environment that will be better in the future. So that is a big win. But we also have opportunities to invest in that still needs those investments to become a reality. And this is where the challenge lies, also for replication. With replication comes this double ask. The promise, a triple ask, the promise to stick to these standards. That these are the golden standards for inclusion, integration, holistic, sustainability. So it's actually the three golden. It has to be comprehensive across the SDGs. It has to be inclusive, leaving no one behind. And it has to be sustainable, really for the long run. So knowing that, we still need the money for the process, and we still need the investments for the implementation. While we work hard and know that there is a lot of money going to the Global South and coming from the Global South to the Global South to be invested, it's still making those matches between those pots of monies. So there's an opportunity in Africa cities, with small island and development states, more in Asia to come, replicating it across these countries we are already at, Latin America for sure. So I really think and see a lot of enthusiasm and need. So there is a need. There's also ambition and opportunity. And I think with the needs driving the ambition and the opportunity, I see it coming. But it also will demand that we continue to do this. Yeah. It's not. It's also that is not a given. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I think it was very, very interesting, and it would definitely inspire the young people. I would like to ask you one last question before I open the floor for the question and answer session. And it's about your message. What message would you like to give to the young people who are aspiring to be urban water planners, water managers, or the future policymakers?
I always find that very challenging because I'm young at heart, but I'm 52, and I don't have. I'm in no position to tell you anything, but I must say that more and more, and this COVID-19 crisis is like this puts the spot on our vulnerability again and again, is that what we do now is going to be critically important on how our future will look like. And you are part of it because more than ever, you can hold governments, businesses, friends and family and parents accountable, but also inform and inspire them. I think this really comprehensive approach, don't fall back to the old, don't long too much to what was there yesterday, tomorrow. And I think this is the biggest challenge. The uncertainty of tomorrow should drive every investment we make. If ever we fall back in what we do today in investing in everything that made us more vulnerable in the past, and we feel happy about it because our jobs were saved now but lost forever, then we will lose out. So if everybody is back on track in the same way as we were within half a year now, we just missed the biggest opportunity, and it will hit us harder the next time. So be part of this. Make sure you can tell the story, invest in that, engage outside of the water world, make those connections, join forces together, uh, and find opportunities also where these type of approaches can work. Water as leverage was an idea. There was not a book from a shelf where I found water and said, oh, let's do this. No, I mean, the challenges in Asia are dire. I had the opportunity to talk to the financial sector, government and NGOs, philanthropy and others. And I said, if we want to do the change, we have to do it ourselves. Nobody is going to do this. I can't wait until somebody says, okay, we'll reinvent the future. We're the only ones who can do that. You are a part of that. Not alone, never alone, but we need your voice, your ideas, your commitments, but also your call to action. You're strong in the call to action when it comes to climate change. Be as strong in the call to action to the SDGs, as critically important across the board for a sustainable future.
Thank you so much, Hank, for sharing your wisdom with us. It's always inspiring to hear you speak. And now I would like to open the floor for the question and answer sessions. We already have some questions in the chat box. There's a question from Pratap Bikram. He is asking you, he's from Nepal, and he's asking you, how can we implement PPP and boot model effectively in rural areas also? I think he meant public and
private partnership.
Yeah.
And what was the last?
How can we implement public-private partnerships and boot model? I'm not sure, effectively in rural areas.
Yeah, in rural areas. So this is also in rural areas, and I can imagine where the question comes from, where there, if you look at this in rural areas where economy is predominantly defined by agriculture, and biodiversity is at stake and climate impacts are hard. What is the public-private model? And looking through the lens of water, you have an opportunity. Yeah, because even in rural situations, water is the shared asset for agriculture, smaller community, a type of industry or economic development. Everything and everyone depends on water. So water can therefore be the common ground of integrating interest, because it is a shared resource. It demands sustainable usage. And therefore water can bring the partners together. So, and partners together means public and private, because the farmer, the industrialist, and the individual all have a need and an interest to make sure that that water is safe and secure. World Wildlife Fund, Nature Conservancy, IUCN, and others think about water fund capacities, where on the scale of a rivershed or an aquifer, a water system scale, you identify the partners, bring them together, make sure that that resource is shared sustainably, and investments turn into revenues for all. So PPPs can definitely be informed on the rural scale, because it's also a system scale and you can bring the different partners together. I don't know what the last part of the question, do you know now?
I think he was talking about boot model, which is build, own, operate, transfer, and design model for the investment.
Yeah, so I think that is, in the Netherlands, we have a different acronym for it, but it's the same from beginning until end. And I think this also taps into one of the challenges Water as Leverage tried to tackle. What you normally see is that a project is cut up in phases. So in the beginning, everything's cool. You think about, wow, let's change the world. So we bring the cool girls and guys in the room, and they think about the most amazing stuff. There's no investor, there's no owner, there's no government. So everything is amazing. In the next phase, these amazing things turn into projects that need to be implemented. Then the projects are taken apart because who's going to fund what? And at the end of the day, what you have left over are only the ones that are feasible. Those are implemented, and the owners have something they never asked for. But since they weren't there from the beginning, they didn't know what the ambition was. So the boot model, or the design, build, construct, maintain, finance, and operate, DBFMO with design, build, finance, maintain, and operate model, is a little bit like that, is that you have all the partners from the beginning until the end in the process in this room. And that's critically important. They have different roles, of course. So the investor is informing and listening in the beginning, and then ensuring investment opportunities. The owner in the end understands that there is a need of an ambition bigger than his or her own needs. And the designer understands that there's a financial feasibility need as well as a need for implementation. So then ambitions from the beginning can continue to be ambitions until the end, while at the same time, implementation, operations and maintenance can be part of the design and innovation phase too. So I think having all stakeholders across the process in the same room is going to be critically important.
Thank you so much. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, me too.
I have another question. What will be the new normal of Sustainable Development Goals implementation after COVID-19 that a young person should be aware of? I think that's a very interesting question.
Yeah, I see the question from Min Nguyen. The new normal of the SDGs. Well, interestingly enough, if you go back to the full 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, the SDGs, they still stand. The pandemic is, in that sense, foreseeable thing if we don't implement the SDGs as a set, but if we go one by one. And I think this is also where the opportunity as well as the vulnerabilities of the SDGs is that the vulnerability is that we take them one by one, take a siloed approach and choose, and cherry pick, and that what is left over are the most dire challenges. So we choose our economy, but not for biodiversity. We choose for people and not for planet, and so forth. And then of course it fails. So I think what the COVID-19 crisis shows us is that the full agenda is critically important, not part of that agenda. Second, if the recovery phase is only repair and stupid infrastructure for a bad economy, a past economy, then we will be lagging way behind. So if the recovery is used for speeding up the implementations of the SDGs, then we did things right. So I think there are many opportunities. I work with governments, multilaterals, and others around the world where we try to identify how we can scale up implementation of the SDGs in the context of this recovery phase. Then it helps. But if we don't, if we just spend our money to get our economies back, then we lose out. Yeah. So what will it mean? The SDGs are the normal. Can the recovery help us speed and scale that implementation up?
Thank you so much. I think we have time for just one more question. Well, we have a question. Setting up of projects like water as leverage requires major efforts from national governments, businesses, and local residents as well. How do you create support for these projects amongst local residents who might not be aware of the future water issues we see?
So I think this is the core cultural aspect of water as leverage, is that it is not about bringing solutions to communities that they have to deal with. It's about bringing capacity to the communities. engaging with local residents, working on awareness by increasing their understanding of vulnerabilities, interdependencies, and opportunities. So while working with them, it's an example. Last year when I was still traveling, I was in Chennai, and it was in halfway the project in Mylapore, in one of the neighborhoods, and having a conversation with the women that were carrying the water. And there was, so the truck comes with water because there was water scarce. The pumps produce only black water, but the sewage goes into a canal. And that canal immediately feeds into the aquifer. So we started a conversation on what they saw as their biggest challenges. And of course they said, having water is our biggest challenges. And then the second was the man, and making the man understand it, and making sure that there's water. But then I try to help them understand that whatever pollution was put into the canal also would end up in their groundwater. But there was no understanding. So from a professional point of view, it is easy. Yeah? If the water goes into the canal, it goes into their natural system. If it goes into the national system, it pollutes your aquifer, and then your source is gone forever. But that is not normal for everybody. So starting, even in such a simple way on why taking care of water is really taking care of your health or your opportunity is critically important. So that is like small. And then second, bringing the women, the children, the youth, the men, the entrepreneurs to these meetings and sessions of Water as Leverage from the beginning, and letting them inform, because their need is different than the need on paper. I can assess vulnerability, but that assessment has to be informed by the people from the ground, the communities that say, hey, yeah, but don't forget this and this. And when a drought hit, this is actually happening. So indigenous knowledge, local knowledge is not per se knowledge that comes from academia or experts. And bringing that together is more than capacitating communities, it's capacitating professionals and informing better solutions. So the better we become at that, because that is always still challenging, the more it is understandable by all what the value of their contribution is. If they just listen in on a bunch of experts that tell them what to do, forget it. That is not what inclusion is about. Inclusion is about that you really get to a partnership, and that partnership informs all. It's not a one-way street. It's an all-way street. We need to make sure that that a collaboration is a collaboration and not somebody just shouting out best knowledge to a crowd that is less informed. No, that is not what inclusion is about. That is not easy. There is distrust in these places between the communities and the government. We have slum clearance programs. So why would people in the slums even trust the entities, the institutions that also clear the slums? There's private sector development with big money that's actually making sure that the segregation and inclusion is not, all these challenges are real. So this also means that doing a program like Water as Leverage means that you have to engage in all those layers and levels. Work with the government, with the private sector, the investors, the community. But it also means it's vulnerable process. You're not in control. We can't tell the government what to do, or the community or the investors what to do. So therefore it is it continues to be challenging. You always have to be on the you always have to be aware of this vulnerability.
Yeah. Exactly. So with that, thank you so much, Hank, for sharing your thoughts and wisdom with us. I'm sure that would really inspire our young audience, and I think they enjoyed it as much as I did myself. And thank you so much for coming and taking our time for us. Now,
Thanks, Mukit.
yeah, I would like to also thank our viewers and participants who have joined us today. I would like to request them to please give us feedback by filling up the Google form that they have got in the email and also chat box that I've shared with them. And also, please stay tuned for the future webinars on water as leverage, as this is the first session of the 4 webinar series that we have planned. So please stay tuned for to our Facebook and Twitter pages. And with that, I would wish everyone a very good rest of the week. Stay safe and stay healthy. Goodbye.
Thank you, Mukit. Goodbye. Goodbye, everybody.